So just on the basis of the presentations we've just had, we had Tom and Brian from the Shannon System Flood Alliance talking about the Shannon system and what's being done there and what needs to be done. We had Joe Healy from the IFA giving the farmers' perspective, Pat O'Connell from the Cork Business Association, but in talking particularly with the relevance to insurance and businesses. And then we've just had Conor with climate change. So very diverse, but all on the same topic. So have we got a first question? Somebody who hasn't asked a question before, have we? Sorry, not that we don't want to hear from you again. So we've, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much for the presentation.
Name, if you say your name and where
name is David Murray from the South Galway Flood Relief Committee. Quick question to Conor. The data that you have there in terms of, I mean, we heard it several times during the presentations here where, you know, it's no longer a 1 in 100 year flood event. It's, you know, so obviously the change that you're seeing is translating into an increase in flooding. Well, that's what from an observation would look like. Where the OPW or where cost benefit analysis is done under looking at a flood relief scheme, is the data that you're providing or that you're looking at here, is that type of data now considered, or is the data that they're looking at for rainfall events, is that built on an older model? What's your view on that?
To answer the second question first, that we work closely with the
Sorry, I can't hear you on the mic there.
No, you're right. Just talk.
Work closely with the Office of Public Works to ensure that climate projections and the uncertainties and the information that are in that are included in the CFRAM studies. We have an ongoing collaboration with them in how best to integrate this information into planning. When you come to understanding flood changes to date, what we see is not yet a significant, statistically speaking, increase in magnitude of floods, but we have seen changes in the frequency. Historically, climate varies and floods tend to cluster in time. We're in a flood-rich period at this time. We've had flood-rich periods in the past, but in the future we would, yes, expect floods to become more frequent and to increase in magnitude, so those return periods decreasing.
Okay, thanks very much.
That's probably my fault.
Sorry, have we any other questions? Right, we have a question over at the back here, thank you. Just if you can wait for the microphone and say who you are and where you're from. It's there beside you now. Thank you.
Are we moving into a Mediterranean type climate or a monsoon period?
No, I mean, there are different climate regions. We do expect with warming that Mediterranean climates will shift north, but certainly not towards Ireland.
I was always told in school going back many years that a Mediterranean climate is a warm, dry summer and a mild, wet winter.
With extremes. So not to the extremes that Ireland get.
About a 100 years event.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We can cut that down to at least 5-year event.
Yeah, I mean, getting precise on those figures on extremes is difficult. We see an increase in the frequency of their occurrence in the future. But I think what's important to think about is the intensity of rainfall events here, and we've seen the impact that they can have. And just on physical understanding alone, that as we warm the atmosphere, we get more intense rainfall events. We've seen it in Dublin, we've seen it in Donegal, we've seen it in Mount Mellick, and in other places recently.
I noticed myself with the intensity of the rainfall.
Yeah.
Now, has El Nino anything to do with it as well?
Yeah, there are different modes of variability that affect climate, natural modes of variability. El Nino can affect, El Nino is sea surface temperature shifts in the Pacific. They can affect European rainfall totals in winter, but the relationship is very small with Ireland.
I think this is a topic that really we could probably talk about for forever. So I think if you maybe you could have a little chat. Okay, can you use the microphone if you can hold the microphone to you? Thank you.
Why did the work start so late down at Meath? In the first week of October?
Sorry, I'm afraid the questions relating that people at the top table can answer here are relating to the subjects that they've had. We can have that question maybe later on when we're talking to the OPW. No, you're fine. I think it's important to put the questions to the people who can give the right answers. I've got one question here. Thank you, Cathal.
Yeah, I'd just like to address my question to Pat O'Connell, and in the context of what he spoke about there this morning, it reflects how households and business people right across the country feel when a scheme is done that they can't get insurance. Now, his address there this morning reflected very much the stonewalling experienced with the Insurance Ireland yesterday at the Oireachtas committee meeting. And the question I have to put to Pat is that his excellent presentation there this morning, will a copy of that go to the relevant section in the OPW, and a copy of it also go to the Minister in the Department of Expenditure and Reform, right? They would be two areas that I think that should be directed to, because it encapsulates exactly where people feel that they are at the moment in relation to the insurance industry.
I suppose that's down to Pat. What's the business view on that? Thank you.
Well, I suppose in the English market we've been quite lucky in the sense that we don't flood. Don't for a minute think that that doesn't mean that we don't lose a lot of money every time there's a flood in Cork City. We do. Quite a lot. In fact, about 2 weeks takings, I reckon. And we have been stonewalled, and as I said earlier, you know, we're getting hurdle after hurdle being put up to prevent us getting flood insurance reinstated. I suppose when the Memorandum of Understanding was announced in 2014, certainly within the business associations, members thought, yeah, this is really, really good, because now we have the insurance industry and the OPW working together, and surely each one will signal their concerns and they'll work together to sort that out. But of course, there is no commitment in that Memorandum of Understanding. It's only an exchange of data, and I think that's really concerning that, you know, there is no commitment to engage in that. Michael McGrath's bill is going through the stages at the moment. I don't think we would have actually needed that had the insurance company engaged. They haven't, and I think we've got to the stage where we have to take it into our own hands and we have to push on with it, and I think there is progress being made in it, and I hope there'll be a lot more progress shortly.
I think we'll just break now for lunch, because what I was going to suggest is that we just take half an hour, and the tea and sandwiches available, compliments of the OPW. So, you know, do have a bite to eat and rejuvenate yourself. And we'll have a short session after lunch, which I think will be of very benefit to particularly communities who are wondering what can they do and what's the best practice that's been done by other communities. So look forward to you having back here in half an hour to 2 o'clock. Thank you. Sorry, I've just one. Sorry. We've got
Pat there for his excellent presentation. Can I just say something in relation to the insurance? The insurance industry is the same as the banking industry, as David Williams says. You start on the first premise that they lie, and then you know where you're going. And this is not any disrespect to the wonderful work you were doing and the resilience that's been going on with all that groups, particularly coming out of Cork for several years since, I believe, the early 80s. Until you align that with, very simply, the withdrawal, the non-payment of rates, you will get no action. You can't apply it to revenue payments because we all know that they've got draconian powers. But if you align it to something that's a service, i.e. rates, and if you do it collectively, the way, I have to say, the very effective organisation, am I right inside the IFA, has operated. You do it through consensual basis, but you had to get out and march in the 50s and the 60s, etc., etc. Until you actually do something provocative like that, nobody will do anything. Enda Kenny undertook, as you know, in the previous study, to meet and have a very tough conversation with the insurance industry. That didn't happen. And he didn't undertook by the end of I think it was end of January, wasn't it, early February, to have a further meeting. That never happened. We now have another Taoiseach, and nothing is happening. And we will have the same conversation with ourselves ad infinitum. So until we do something strong and collectively around the country say, as business owners, if we're not getting flood insurance, we do not pay our rates. Yeah. Then we have an impetus and we have a united body. I suppose the thing about the INFF is the INFF is very much trying to work within the process and to follow the process. The bill that's going through, well, there's been a lot of work done. I think the bill that's going through the Dáil at the moment
is, you know, using the system to make changes. I don't know if this is... Pat wants to say a few words on that.
I have no issue answering this. We have looked at the rates issue. We have looked at stopping the rates. Our problem in Cork is that, like every other city, we have multinationals. They happen to be the biggest stores on Patrick Street and the biggest ones and the biggest ratepayers. Once they hit their targets, they're not particularly worried about flooding or anything else once they hit their target. That is an issue. Does people power work? Yes, look at water charges. You know, I mean, if you get a movement that is strong enough and that is powerful enough and that, you know, advocates or lobbies enough, I think then, yes, you do get a reaction. There were some really awkward questions, I think, asked to Mr. Buckley last Thursday in the Oireachtas committee. Those questions really came from here. From members here who you know, have taken the stats and drilled down into them and taken the statistics that have been given out, you know, about very high coverage of flooding in Ireland. But when you drill down, you see that there's very low flooding coverage in areas that really need flooding. So, you know, there is a movement there. I think it is a very effective movement. I think it is growing. I think, you know, again, we're coming back into the season where we're going to have it on our news every night of areas, you know, damaged, people's lives destroyed or certainly curtailed for quite a considerable time. I think that is having an effect. Those events are becoming more prominent, as we've just heard. And I think it is becoming more and more and more of an issue. You know, we had announcements here today again. Would they have come had people not been out there saying, you know, something has to happen? Certainly in Cork, I know there's a movement again to have something done.
Thank you. I hope that's helped with the debate. We can continue debate by networking over the lunch, and we'll see you back shortly. Enjoy your bite to eat.